Are you an entrepreneur that is feeling frustrated? Do you find yourself procrastinating? And does the process of building your business feel slow and lonely? What if I told you by making one change, you could experience a new surge of energy and excitement that actually caused you to think differently so you could have a breakthrough and go to the next level? The one thing that has changed everything for me is knowing this. If I'm building my business by myself, I'm making it harder than it needs to be. Why is that? It's because fundamentally, no one succeeds alone. No one succeeds alone. In fact, if you think that you could succeed all by yourself and be self-made, I would say maybe it's an ego problem. What does ego mean? Eliminating God and others. That's what's going to happen if I actually think I could succeed all by myself. So today we're going to unpack, what does it mean to have collaborative relationships so we're not building our business by ourselves? Let's define what a collaborative relationship is. It's a relationship that's not just for the sake of information, but it has the goal of transformation. Today we're going to go after the 4 C's of collaborating relationship. How do we find them? And then lastly, what do we do once we find these people? And I want to share a story with you. I launched my real estate business in 2007 when everybody else was leaving the industry. I was so just naive and just didn't know what I didn't know about having a real estate business that I went into launching my business with a lot of zeal and excitement. And I'm so glad I did. And yet the reality is, after the first 12 months in my new business, my real estate business, I got stuck. What do I mean by stuck? I kept getting the same results year after year. And I'm not exaggerating at all. When I say year after year, I'm talking about from 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And guess when it changed? When I found my who, a gentleman named Rick DeLuca. I was stuck in my business and one thing led to another and I found my who, Rick DeLuca. I remember when I met Rick DeLuca, I was so excited that he came to the real estate office, the Coldwell Banker in Raymore, Missouri, and shared some of the best practices in the industry for building a referral-based business. And the broker owner, God bless him, a gentleman who became like a father figure to me, Bob Knitter, really took me underneath his wing. And I would blow up his phone all these random times because I was so good at lead generating to find the deal. And yet I had no clue what to do with the paperwork and all the details once I found the business. And so I think Bob Knitter, the broker owner of Coldwell Banker, he knew I needed some help. And so he connected me to Rick DeLuca because Rick, after he shared in the real estate office we were at, he offered one-on-one coaching. And the broker owner, Bob Knitter, had no desire to work with Rick DeLuca on that scale. And yet he said, I have a gentleman in mind who I think would be excited to work with you, Rick. And long story short, Bob Knitter connected me to Rick DeLuca. And I'm so glad he did because I was stuck in my business. I was doing everything I knew to do, which was working 24/7, trying to be all things to all people, and just kept getting the same results. And here came Rick DeLuca. And I remember Rick shared with me, Chris, when the student is ready, the teacher always appears. When the student is ready, the teacher always appears. And today the context is I'm going to be speaking to people that are like me, entrepreneurs. And yet we know as entrepreneurs that the purpose of our business is to fund our perfect life and our purpose, right? There's the lifestyle, there's a purpose. And ultimately that when it comes to finding the right who, I want you to think outside of your business as an entrepreneur. Maybe you're in a season where when it comes to your faith, the spiritual side of your life, it's time for you to elevate, to go to the next level, and you're missing a who. Maybe it's not in the entrepreneurship. Maybe it's in your spiritual life. Maybe it's not in your spiritual life or your business. Maybe it's in your family. Maybe you're like me. It's time to implement a great marriage counselor, to start reading some books and to get more skill to navigate the relationships within your family tree, those within your household. Maybe it's time to find a who in that category when it comes to your family. Maybe it's in the area of your fitness. Maybe you're thriving in your business, your relationships are well, but you feel like you're building the relationships in your business at the expense of your own physical well-being. Maybe you need a breakthrough when it comes to your health and fitness. Maybe you're missing a who in that category. Or maybe it's in the area of your finances. You're great on lead generating for the business, and yet you need some help. It's time for you to learn some skills, because we know from Dave Ramsey that we can't out earn poor spending habits. So there's times in the area of our finances that the answer isn't just go out there and make money. And then maybe we need to find a who when it comes to recreation and fun, enjoyment and hobbies. That maybe it's time in this season that we course correct, we pivot, and we start to put emphasis on vacation, downtime. We figure out what that looks like for us in this season, because the seasons do change. So right up front, now that you've considered where you're at in a few aspects of your life, I want to frame this by saying that by finding a who is that we could directly learn from someone as a result of meeting with them, or we could take advantage of technology and all the resources out there and indirectly learn from someone. What is a collaborative relationship? Once again, it's a relationship that's not just about information. It's a mutual relationship where there's collaboration for the sake of transformation. There's three things that I've discovered that have been so helpful for me that I want to unpack for you. When it comes to a collaborative relationship, the person that you may be missing, here's some of the qualifiers. They challenge your current level of thinking, meaning they think a little bit different than you, maybe a lot of bit different than you. They don't just agree with everything that you have to say. I'll give you an example. One of my mentors, his name's Brian, and I was talking to him about a real estate businesses and offices and these different aspects of a real estate business. And he goes, Chris, what would it look like to envision doing real estate in a completely new way? He took my real simple question and he expanded on it that caused me to think in a completely new way. I'll share another example. A mentor of mine named David Higginbotham. By the way, I've had him on the show many times, so you could check one of the prior episodes out if you're looking to go to the next level in the relationship with your spouse or your children. I would consider him an expert in those areas. And there was a time where my mother-in-law was staying at our home during the day. What do I mean during the day? I mean my father-in-law would drop my mother-in-law off in the afternoon, if I remember correctly. And then she would stay all the way until 9:30 p.m. And I remember just thinking to myself, I honestly, I'll be fully transparent. I was not excited, to say the least, about it. I thought to myself, I was pretty harsh in my thinking, because in my mind, I was thinking, well, she made decisions that caused her to be exactly where she was at. And I was perceiving my very own mother-in-law as an inconvenience to the rhythm of my household. My mindset needed challenge. And so I was perceiving my mother-in-law as an inconvenience, to say the least, meaning I would come home from work and she was sitting there in the same chair day after day. And David challenged me, because when it comes to a collaborative relationship, the first thing is they challenge our current level of thinking. And here's how David challenged me, to give you an example. He said, Chris, what if you decided that if it's important to your wife, it's important to you? Whoa, you talk about the way of thinking that changed everything. There it is. So maybe the person you're missing someone that's challenging your current level of thinking. Our thinking leads to our doing leads to our results. And in order to do better, we need to think better. We need to think differently. So number one, challenge your current level of thinking. Number two, when it comes to a collaborative relationship that you may be missing, they connect you to other resources. What do I mean by that? Here's an example. They're recommending to you podcasts, books. A gentleman named Brian, who's a mentor of mine, a dear friend, we were talking about legacy, and he recommended a book that was never on my radar to read, because I don't typically frequently read books from Harvard's library. And yet, sure enough, this book, Your Legacy, Your Leadership Legacy, Brian recommended to me. And you talk about a timely read. This is one example. The person you're missing, they're going to be able to connect you to podcasts, to books, other people that it may behoove you to know. They may connect you to a different way of thinking, such as I've already reiterated. And the last one I was thinking about, these people, they tend to see your potential, meaning they see where you're at now, and yet they believe in you. They see where you could be. So they believe in you. They encourage you. They challenge you. They help you get to where you desire to be because they believe in you and your potential. The next one that I would like to unpack is going to be, how do we find them? I was sharing today in what I was going to discuss with you with my wife, and she said, Chris, that's great. And she asked me a great question. She goes, Chris, I hear all the time that you know, go find somebody that's already doing the thing well. And she said, how do we find them? And I thought to myself, well, that's a great point, babe. And so I wrote down, how do we find them? And what do we do once God reveals that person to you? So I would say step number one of anything that we're seeking after, whether it's a coach, a mentor, is this: the biblical principle in Matthew, and it shows up in other places in Scripture in the New Testament, but it says, ask, seek, knock, keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. So there's a level of persistency there. So I would say step number one of how do you find a who in an area that you're looking to go to the next level in, I would say ask. For me, my context, I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Jesus. I would start off by saying, hey, God, I want to level up in my business. Will you show me somebody that could help me, that I could learn from, that could mentor me, that will help me go to the next level? So number one, it starts with asking. Number two, I think you're going to have to take the initiative to invite, meaning that, okay, let me give you how this unfolds many times for me. At church, one of my favorite parts about church is getting to know people, connecting with interesting people. So one of the things that I do is I linger in the lobby a little bit. I might take my time before and after service to grab a cup of coffee and see who I can meet. Now, I am extroverted, and so I realize for somebody that's more introverted, that could be a real challenge for them. But guess what? Growth always happens out of our comfort zone. And if you're looking to grow, well, buckle your seatbelt because it's going to be uncomfortable. So number one, ask. And it's just like what Rick DeLuca told me. When the student is ready, the teacher always appears. When the student is ready, the teacher always appears. So number one is going to be, after we ask, it's going to be take the initiative to strike up a conversation with that person. Most people, generally speaking, enjoy talking about themselves. I'm going to give you a little bit of a framework on how we have a conversation with someone. It's the FORD acronym: family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Usually within those four areas, one of those categories is going to be a passion button for the person. So start by not talking about yourself, but by asking questions so you get to know them more. Strike up a conversation. And then if it's resonating where it's like, man, you guys are kind of vibing, there's a mutual energy there where that person seems to be somewhat interested in you asking them questions and all is going well with that, I would recommend taking a bold next step and saying, hey, I've enjoyed talking to you. I would like to treat you to coffee or lunch so we can talk about this thing and be specific. Don't stay away from the I want to pick your brain. Eh, okay, I understand that. And yet I believe that you could do better and come up with something more meaningful than just wanting to pick their brain, because that sounds weird and creepy. I don't know what pick your brain means. So be specific, meaning you take part of that conversation and say, hey, you mentioned that you're a business owner. I'm feeling a little bit stuck in this area of my business. I was wondering if I bought you a cup of coffee or lunch, would I be able to share with you kind of what's going on and get some advice for you? Would you be willing to help me? Most people are generous, and when they hear you say, would you help me? Usually they lean into that and they're actually willing to help. So I would say take the initiative to buy lunch or coffee and follow through on that one. Like exchange numbers, take the initiative, meaning you text or call and set it up with them. Number 2 is be teachable. Be teachable. How do you lose with meeting with somebody that could be a mentor? Is you show it up as a know-all and you just talk the whole time. Don't do that. Don't do that. Show up as a student. Here's what I mean by that. When I meet up with almost everybody, with no exaggeration, because I believe at any given time, I could learn from anybody, anywhere. And I realize that one word or one sentence can change everything. And so what do I mean show up as a student? I mean show up with your pen and paper, ready to take notes. Show up ready to take notes. And that doesn't mean that you write down everything they say, but you may write down something that they say that triggers a thought in your mind. Capture that one. So we show up as a student with our pen and paper, and maybe you write down a question or two and ask them a question. Be teachable, ask questions, and write stuff down is what I wrote down. The next one is going to be express gratitude. After you meet up with that person, jot down a thank you letter or send a text message and say, hey, you know what? I really appreciate you making time to meet with me. Thank you so much. Here's what I got out of our conversation. Share with them something specific. And this is the one that is gold. Here's the gold. Because I realize some of the people that are the most sharp, the most skilled in their area of expertise, they're just like me. They do not want to waste their time. They don't want to waste their time. So think about this. If you're showing up and you're taking notes, asking questions, looking for help, what do you think they're going to want to hear from you as a result? It's this. Take action and report back. Take action on something that you got out of the conversation. Go do that and report back to them. I do this all the time. Matter of fact, I just sent one of those text messages to a mentor of mine, where based on our last conversation, and I mean this conversation, to circle back to bring something to write on, I will actually show up. This is it right here. I wrote down his name, and then I wrote this. Ask about his trip. What was his favorite part? Did he do any writing? Because he's been writing a book. I'll actually in advance think through, where did I leave off with him? And what can I ask him about based on our last conversation? Because it's mutual, right? It's not one-sided. It's very much mutual. Now I realize this could look a little bit different, because when it comes to, let me finish my thought on I better finish my train of thought on the loop of the last one of taking action, report back. Go put something that you learn from them into action. This gets back to what it says in scripture. Don't be just a hearer of the word, be a doer. One of the things that sets us apart as entrepreneurs is the difference maker is going to be taking action. I was the head coach for a real estate business that did over $2 billion a year in volume. And I had the pleasure of being the head coach. And the one thing that I could pick up on right away that would show me whether or not somebody was going to have the most likely indicator that someone would have longevity in being a business owner or they would simply go back to what they did before. They wouldn't have success as in being a business owner. They would go back to being an employee or whatever they did before. Is this. They would take action. They were not afraid to take action. They let go of this idea that they had to be perfect and know it all and have everything prepared. They were not afraid to go and take action. So go take action based on something that you learned as a result of this person that's now in your world, and report back to them. By the way, that's a great way to get a second meeting with them. Now, I realize that what I'm talking about is really like mentorship. We could have mentorship where it's mutual and where there's a mutual benefit on both parties. And also there's paid mentorships. There's people that pay me to learn from me because they could have accelerated results as a result of launching a business or a specific area. So there's different levels of mentorship, if you will. The whole point of today, I want to recap this, is that you could be one relationship away from the breakthrough that you've been longing for. Who's the person you're missing? Who's the person, and what's a step that you can take within the next 24 hours to take action to find that who? Maybe it's to write down your missing person report. Write down who it is that you're missing in a way that's so clear that you would be able to recognize that person when you meet them. Well, if you've made it this far, number one, thank you for tuning in. Secondly, this is part 2 of a 5-part series. And if you missed the first part, go back and watch part 1 because this is part 2. And make sure you hit the subscribe button before you head out today. I trust that this has been helpful and that by taking action on something that was said or a thought that you had based on something I said, I bet you will be the difference maker. We'll see you.